were going to say that. That's so dumb. I love it.
Why'd you try to do it in unison?
Well, I thought you were going to possibly say something else. So then I was like, I'm going to guess what he's going to say. And you ended up saying that. I didn't know you were going to yell it, though.
And you yelled it way loud.
Because I was half laughing while I was saying it. Like, no way is he actually saying this. Who is it all over for?
Minnesota.
Oh.
Got their asses clapped tonight. 124-94. The Thunder have won the West for the first time since 2012. The youngest team in the NBA is headed to the NBA Finals. And, like, I don't think anyone's sitting here today going, I cannot believe this happened. Oklahoma City, how? But what they're doing right now is pretty damn special, Morgan.
Yeah.
Especially, coming into this game 5 tonight, you're expecting Minnesota to play with a desperation. And OKC just knocked them out early. Yep. A 26-9 first quarter.
Well, I thought, because I think there's going to be some people that really look at the Minnesota angle and they go like, man, they weren't playing like with a certain type of intensity coming out, all these different things. Sure, yes, we can get to that. But OKC to play at such a dominant level for so much of this series. And then in this game, even when they're up by 26, sprinting back and just playing at that same type of intensity that they started the game. And it's not like they were scared that they were going to let up and Minnesota was going to come back in. They're just true competitors. They're true hoopers that like love the game, play the right way. And yeah, they happen to be pretty damn young too.
We said this after game 4, but I truly believe it. I just think we're witnessing one of the more special defenses in probably decades in the NBA because they have so many guys who can guard. I mean, we can acknowledge their defense being awesome and also acknowledge the fact that like Minnesota has shown the ability to score the basketball in the NBA.
Correct.
Right? Last series, Jokic has dominated the NBA, but they make everybody's life more difficult. In this series, especially the last 2 games, what they did to Anthony Edwards.
Just taking him out of it.
Completely.
Yeah. And, you mentioned even in this game, you did a breakdown of basically OKC taking him out of it that last game. But going back, and when you did that breakdown, you really realized like, damn, Ant isn't moving around though. He's not making that extra effort. And then in this game specifically, when we saw that happen a few times, I'm like, Deuce, look how difficult it would be though to get out of Lou Dort's like presence, his arms, his any space in between. It's close to impossible. But now if you're Ant, you're going, okay, that's what I have to practice for. But yes, going back to OKC, the dominance along the perimeter, it's pretty damn special when you have that many players that can do that.
And the buy-in. It takes a buy-in. It takes communication. They have smart players. They play with an edge, and they played the same way all year. This is like nothing new. This is what they did to teams. I saw that Mark Stein had a stat that he put out just a little bit ago. OKC, the first team in NBA history with 4 wins by at least 30 points in the playoffs.
Damn.
They just suck the life out of you. They make you work so hard to get yours.
Yep.
And they showed it in this series. I think the addition of Caruso was such a big pickup for them. You think about Caruso and Hartenstein, like kind of these missing pieces, but it's not like they're asking Caruso. They're trading for Caruso. Like some teams would have traded for Caruso and said, hey, we need you to play 38, 40 minutes in a playoff game. I don't even know what he played in this game. Of course, it was a blowout. Caruso plays 24 minutes. They're not asking him to defend for 45, 46 minutes because they've got Lou Dort, because they have Case and Walls. They've got SGA. They have players up and down the roster with the strength, the physicality, the aggressiveness, the relentlessness, the IQ, that total package that are willing to do anything and play any role.
By the way, I mean, when I say this, then we could talk about stars and everything, but it's not like they have a big 3 superstar power, of those big names that we saw over the last couple of years.
I think those days are gone.
And I agree. And by the way, when I say that, I do have to also add, though, like SGA is the MVP of the league. Chet is someone who has shown his ability to be so dominant on both ends of the floor and just being that modern day big that can also stretch the floor on the offensive end while protecting the rim on the other end. So yeah,
and
like
then Jalen Williams. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they have such special players, but these players also developed and learned how to play basketball the right way within this organization. And so then adding those complementary pieces, like you just mentioned with Alex Caruso and Hartenstein, it's just like, yeah, I mean, that's doing basketball the right way. I mean, from the front office all the way down to how they're playing.
I mean, it's the patience too, you know, like you said. Sam Presti's been doing it a long time.
Yeah.
Even thinking back, you know, the last time they were in the finals was 2012, and that was with a young OKC team that featured Durant, Harden, Westbrook, Ibaka.
Yeah.
When they get there in 2012 and they lose, I think most people assume, oh, they're going to be back like next year or the year after. Well, look at it. It's 2025.
Took time.
It took a long time to get back there, and they've had different incarnations of this, but obviously it starts with the SGA trade. And I also think, you know, they benefit a little bit from the pandemic where it's like, hey, like, yeah, let's just be bad and fans aren't really at games anyway. Mm-hmm. It's not that big of a deal. We're losing money anyway. We might as well just like, hey, we've got all these draft picks from the Clippers trade. We've got a guy we love in SGA. We think highly of.
Yeah.
Let's keep building this out. And so they were bad for a couple of years. And then Chris Paul comes to town with CP3.
The veteran leadership. Yeah. And like, not only did it change in Chris Paul's game that later on in his career or whatever, but what it did for these young players.
Lou Dort and SGA.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, of course, the hiring of Mark Daigneault.
Oh, my gosh.
They developed him in the G League. He was with the OKC
years.
Blue.
Yep.
You know, and then he gets the opportunity. And then something they talked about in the broadcast, which was a great point. He didn't feel judged when they were winning 20 games back-to-back seasons, right? He felt like, no, they believe in me.
Yep.
They're trusting my development with these guys, and they think big picture-wise we're headed in the right direction. They stuck with him. They didn't bail out. They let him develop. They let him grow. They let him go through some of the mistakes with those young teams.
It doesn't happen in professional sports. It's not just basketball. And I've said over the years, I've always used the P word, patience, patience, patience. Now, you have to have the right people in place, the right culture in place, if you're going to believe in that type of patience, of course. And there's risk involved as well, like being patient with people. But that is just, it's how you do, I guess, basketball the right way. I know I've already said that, but like, I truly believe that. I'm not saying like all the times that people had the big three, like they lucked out when they won a championship or whatever else. No. I don't think it like ends up being like, there's still a lot of talent involved, but I think you see in basketball, if you do have a patient organization and you're a small market and you do have to do things a different way, then you buy in to that different way.
Yeah. And it takes what OKC did. Making the right trades, making the tough trades.
Yep.
Like trading Paul George is not like an easy thing to do when you have a guy, right? But it's the belief of like, okay, this is not the direction we want to go.
Yep.
He wants to be in LA. Okay, let's work this out, right? Moving on from Westbrook, who won an MVP there. Those aren't easy decisions to make. Right? Especially because of how emotional things can get, right? With players who played such pivotal roles and you see these young players grow. Presti wasn't afraid to make the tough decisions, and it ultimately pays off. And they've constructed this team like brilliantly. I mean, it's hitting on draft picks, right? I mean, you think back to the fact that they drafted Chet, but in that same draft, they draft Jalen Williams. What's funny about it, right before that, they had the pick right before Jalen Williams. They took Ousmane Dieng, who doesn't really play for them. But you didn't hit on that one. Okay. Yeah. That's fine.
You hit
on two of them.
And you gave yourself chances.
Yes. And it doesn't mean he hits every time, but I think they do a good job of like moving on. And, you know, they have a process. They obviously know how to develop and scout, find the right guys. And I think they put together a likable team that plays hard. They're fun, they're connected, and I vibe with that.
That's what's wild about, I mean, I'm jumping ahead, but like if the Pacers do end up beating the Knicks, you have two, in my opinion, I mean, let me know if you feel differently about this. You have two really likable teams in the NBA that are playing in the NBA finals, if that's the case.
Yeah.
And I can't, I've hated so many teams and players and everything throughout I'm a fan. Of course I do. But like, I really like these two teams, the players on these teams, and that could be really enjoyable basketball. It could be a grinded out basketball. I even feel like this series against the Wolves, although it wasn't exciting, how fun was it? Not necessarily tonight, but how fun was it throughout the series to see OKC with these dominant performances, because they were seriously doing everything the right way, from their rotations to the extra hustle play to the ball movement to leading to the best shot, not the first shot. Like those things, you are witnessing art, and then I'm just saying appreciate it while it's here too.
Do you think Paul George should get something?
No.
Like a finals bonus? Because these teams are not in the NBA finals. I know I'm already putting the Pacers there. These teams are not in the NBA finals without Paul George. Think about this, okay?
No.
Think about this.
Okay.
Paul George was with Indiana.
Uh-huh.
He got traded to Oklahoma City, okay, in exchange for Oladipo and Sabonis.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So
okay.
Sabonis is now with the Pacers.
Uh-huh.
Paul George with OKC. They trade Paul to LA for SGA. Completely changes their team. They get an MVP. And then the Pacers trade Sabonis for Tyrese Halliburton.
Wow.
So without Paul George.
So no, he still doesn't deserve
And without
an
Sabonis, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess
when
none
you
of this
really,
happens.
When you really
Crazy.
put it like that, neither one of them deserve extra money. No, absolutely not.
My God.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm really happy for Oklahoma City because I think nowadays, you see, I mean, the Cavs face this a little bit.
What?
Where they had this amazing regular season and then they kind of sputter out at the end.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there are some people, because of OKC's hype, they won 57 games last year because of OKC's hype. They're like, oh, this team, if they don't fade out. Remember Windhorst had the story that said, like, hey, someone told me the teams in the West don't respect OKC. And anyway, I just felt like if they had like a disappointing playoff exit, people are going to be like, okay, is Jalen Williams really that guy? Is this guy really that guy? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just glad that's not happening because I think this team has gone about it the right way. I think they've taken their bumps along the way too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about someone like Jalen Williams who has like gotten a lot of shit because he hasn't had great offensive playoff games all the time, even dating back to last year. But it's like, he's a young player in the league. And
look at him
sometimes
grow.
it takes just the repetition. It's like, also,
the experience.
what else is he doing out there? Well, he's defending his ass off too. But anyway, his growth, right? Their growth, when things maybe at times in that Denver series, they looked rattled.
Dude, and growth is fun to watch,
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
I mean, all of that.
Celebrate it.
Yeah.
Celebrate that this young team that was put together plays a style. It's defense. It's dogs. It's everywhere. And they are making life challenging for some of the best players in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And another thing we should talk about, Jason Timpf brought up this point, and it's interesting, just talking about how like McDaniels was struggling defending in this series SGA at times, right? Well, SGA is really good. But the point he was making that he thinks like maybe those shorter, stronger guys with that strong base and can play physical, but they're still long, are actually could be better defenders in some regard against some of these players, where we saw that with SGA at times. But in addition to that, I'm watching Ant, and it's like, dude, Lou Dort,
shut him down.
Caruso, these guys may not be like some 6'9", 7'11" wingspan. They're long enough, and they're strong enough, and they're smart enough.
Yeah.
I went a lot of different directions there.
Yeah, you did.
I was like
bing,
Caruso.
bing, bing.
Caruso on defense.
Yeah.
That was me.
No. I think to that point, I definitely think that is something that coaches need to look at when they are looking at some of these matchups. Now, you look at someone like Jalen Brunson, and he loves when a shorty's on him because he can always
and who's
elevate
on him in
over.
this series? Neesmith.
Yeah. And it's like, look
Big,
that's
strong.
made his life so different on the offensive end, just altering so much of his offensive game, just a lot of it, not stopping him completely, but definitely slowing him down. But you do look at this series against SGA. I'm curious if they could have done a little bit more Ant or something, like it's not like he's like the stockiest player, but he just had too much he needed to do and that they needed him to do on the offensive end that he still wasn't doing. Maybe that would have slowed, but they just have so many weapons that it's like when you're looking at that situation, it's really hard to compare to what you're saying.
I mean, it goes back to their defense. It's the fact that they force so many turnovers, right? 21 turnovers, 20 plus turnovers again for Minnesota. And in this game, 14 steals by OKC, which is a number we've seen them hit in this series again. So it's like, when you talk about slowing guys down individually. Well, if you turn the ball over, there's cross matches everywhere. You're on your heels. You're in a really tough spot.
You are.
This had more to do, I think, with Oklahoma City's defense than anything. Just
it
making
totally did.
life so challenging on this group. And then someone like Julius Randle, who had moments in this postseason where you're looking at him going, man, he's really turning it on. He hasn't been a playoff performer in the past. But as this series went on, he had 3 games that were pretty disappointing. Got off to a slow start tonight. Got it going a little bit late, but it wasn't a very good showing the last few for Randall.
And I think he'll get shit on by a lot of people that just love hot takes and all the different things and be like, this is just who he is. Like, at this point of his career or whatever. I still saw growth from him, even from a mature standpoint, right? With how he took criticism, how he dealt with some adversity, not necessarily just on the floor, more like when him and a coach, Chris Finch were getting into it, or like there was another issue going on. It's like he just was doing a much better job than he has in the past of like staying a little bit more composed with his body language. Now, there are still times, especially in this series, where he'd get chaotic.
And tonight in the first quarter, he gets picked early and he just like turns the other way, doesn't go back on defense at all.
And when you see those moments happen again, and especially in a do or die game, like, you're going to have your questions and they're totally fair to question, but I just don't think that he should be completely shit on. I think he kind of is what he is at his point of his career. Maybe he can learn from those moments, but Ant has to learn after such a fantastic job throughout the postseason. He has a lot to learn from this series specifically.
I thought he had moments where he showed that he could handle the pressure. Once he was like, hey, they're going to deny me. If I've got the ball, I got to make something happen.
Yep.
Get into the paint. And, Minnesota missed some great looks early in this game that I thought he generated. I think for me, it's looking at him going, if you don't have the ball, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, you are going to stand there? Are you going to let them take you out of the game? And I something you brought up earlier was Lou Dort. It's like Lou Dort wouldn't even let him get the ball. Then we got to find ways to set screens for him to try to get off. We have to make Lou Dort work. And I'm not saying it's easy. Lou Dort is incredible and relentless.
Preface
all
this with we're not saying any of this is easy.
But it's just like, we're talking about getting to the next level. I think a lot of people think Ant could be the face of the league. And you see these moments, you're like, oh my God, maybe he is. He's still a young player. But he got taken out of this series. Mm-hmm. And I think there's levels that he can get better at from a conditioning standpoint, dealing with physicality and understanding your athleticism is such a tool, your speed, all that stuff. You have to be better off ball.
And you talked about this in whatever clip we did before. And I loved it. I completely agree. You're like, he's really going to have to look at his conditioning. I mean, you see, when you say conditioning, he's already obviously in great shape and all the different things. But when you see Steph Curry running around without the basketball for, an entire game at 35 years old, whatever, it's like, like that's the type of, how do you get there? But then also, even when you do have a Lou Dort denying you the basketball, how do you find that step through shield off where you can have that one moment where maybe a ball handler is actually getting you the basketball the right way? I think it has a lot to do with people not feeling confident getting him the basketball too when he does have someone like Lou Dort on him. But also Lou Dort just did a fantastic job. Yeah. And guess what? I think Ant can absolutely learn from this experience and still even do a better job.
And where does Minnesota go from here, right? We talk about Ant, but Randall has a team option.
Yeah.
Are they going to give him a long-term deal? Will he just opt in the next year? I imagine he could go chase a long-term deal somewhere else in a free agent class that's not very good.
That's true.
So Naz Reid can also opt out. He wants a long-term deal. Minnesota wants to keep him. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a free agent. And then you throw in someone like Conley, who is still under contract, but like, ooh, okay. Like,
you almost need an upgrade at that. But no, you do need an upgrade at that position.
It's noted. He still has, he's such a smart player, but he's getting older, right? And you can count him for like 20 minutes a night. It's just, you're trying to figure out how to tinker with this roster when there's not a lot of flexibility to improve it. So that's going to be a challenge, but I also think it's going to be on Minnesota to figure out, like, can you lean more into Rob Dillingham next year in his second year? You know, you see these glimpses from Terrence Shannon when he got the opportunity. You're like, okay, there's something there.
Yes, absolutely.
Or do you almost lean a little younger next year and count on that and to see where that looks like, and then you re-sign Naz Reid, and I don't know.
Dude, just when you say that, it's so tough to think about it like that, because you go, how do you capitalize on Ant's best years?
Yeah.
How do you capitalize on his best years? Like, he's going to gain so much from just this last year. How do you make sure you put the right stuff around him, especially after you made the blockbuster trade that you did make to get to the same spot that the other team that you traded to is going to probably get to as well. So yeah, I don't know the answer, but I do know if you had Ant on your squad, you do every damn thing that you can to put all your money into it, to make changes, to put the best pieces, the best opportunities around him for this next year.
Well, there's a little bit of an unknown too, because you have an ownership group that officially took over from Glenn Taylor this year. Like, what? They may have different views on, like, Chris Finch. They could be like, you know what? I know everyone likes Naz Reid. We don't want to do that.
Sure.
There's a lot up in the air. And so it's going to be interesting to see kind of what they do. They also spent money on it. So they're probably like, no, we want to win. Like, let's figure this shit out. What do we do? It's going to be a fascinating offseason for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And this is what, it's tough to win this league. And I was getting a conversation with someone about this earlier, and it's so true. I think the windows are, shorter in today's era because of the aprons. And, if you have a whole bunch of big salaries and you're not hitting, it's like, how do you get better? How do you take that next step when you don't have a lot of flexibility? Right now, a team like OKC is in a great position.
Hell yeah.
They've got a shit ton of draft picks over the next 5 drafts still. They're going to have to pay some of these young guys at some point, but they're young.
They can make tweaks with their picks.
Yeah.
They can do, with their assets, like so many different. They put themselves in such a great position to always take that risk and make that upgrade.
Yes, there's a wolf in the background.
It was just a dog. It was just a dog.
Thanks for telling me that. I feel for Wolves fans too. I think there are moments you start to really believe, especially after the last couple of rounds, and it's so hard to get back there. Hell, we started this by talking about 2012 was the last time OKC made the finals, and everyone at the time thought, oh my God, hell, go back to 2002. This is actually the anniversary of Mike Bibby's game winner against the Lakers in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. In 2002, Lil Deuce Mason 100% believed that after they lost to the Lakers in Game 7, the Kings were going to get back there and do it again. Well, they haven't been back to the conference finals since. So enjoy the moments. You don't know how long the window's going to be open. So when that window is there, you find a way.
What's that? You find a way
to rip it back open.
Dog.
To rip it back open. Anyway. Any other thoughts?
Everything that you just talked about with, like, the fascinating offseason, tweaks that OKC can make, what Ant needs to do differently or challenge himself to do in the offseason. There's a lot of exciting things. Like, for how this series ended tonight with a shitty game. Overall, there's a lot of fun angles going to the next step, to the offseason, and with these teams.
I'm ready for Pacers Thunder. Let us know how you felt about OKC and their season and what you expect for the NBA Finals. Shut up, Bojack. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe.
Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. They tell you what they know. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. The podcast that you know.